I'll just go to one more thing. Yep. Can you see the mouse yet? There it is. There it is. It's very hard from a distance. There we are. Full screen mode. Okay, here's the clicker.
Thank you.
Big one.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank Robin, Marion, Tim and Karen for inviting me to be part of the Abbey 2025. The last time I was in Mackay was for the first symposium that was organised by Robert Heather. And also thank you to the Yui people who have cared for the land upon which we tread so heavily. Making artist books can feel like stepping into a strange country. I always say that travelling to Japan is like going to another planet, but the inhabitants are kindness personified and the strangeness is intoxicating. How did I tumble into book production? I grew up on a sheep and wheat farm in the central west of New South Wales. Unlimited horizons and imaginative days of play. In my 4-year diploma in art studies at Newcastle College of Advanced Education, I felt that I had indeed landed on a friendly planet, with ideas and philosophies to be explored, and teachers who extended their knowledge to you, if you inquired. It was the late 70s in Newcastle, and our inter-realm classes were held at the Star Hotel across the road, and there was both frisson and fusion between students and staff. It was, as discussed yesterday, a somewhat loose curriculum with good intentions and with mostly practicing artists on the lecturing staff. It was 1978. It was the last year of my diploma, and I had to do a project for my design unit. Why I made a hand-printed book for this unit is still a mystery to me. It was a totally self-generated project. These were the days in art courses where you just had to come up with something to be marked at the end of the semester. I had never made a book. I had never written a story. Hearing about the graphic investigation workshop yesterday gave me the shivers. Wow, what an extraordinary space for creativity. Anyway, I was in Newcastle, in share houses, surrounded by colleagues discussing ideas and theories on art and life, friends casting yarrow sticks to read the I Ching. I studied the work of Jung, the Swiss psychotherapist who is best known for his concept of archetypes and his theory on individuation. These concepts were the foundation on which I created my story. And you can see my research notes, all handwritten. So, yes, new and the old here. These are my notes that I made from a book called Psychological Types, talking about the archetypes, Jungian archetypes, which include thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition, and the introverted and extroverted versions of each of these. The images were etchings on zinc plates, but how to print the text. The technical assistant in printmaking at the art school, Arthur Tupman, had the pages offset printed somewhere in the university, which proved to be a bit tricky because I supplied to the printer single sheets of paper. And it was really the printing of text in my artist books that remained a movable feast. I moved to Adelaide in 1979, and in 1981 I made another book, Dianne and Streams, using a similar format to the making of the glass ball. At the time I wasn't too sure about what to do with my books or where to exhibit them. But there was a drive and curiosity to create an extended series of images which responded to a text. Once again I worked in solitude on this book, researching and writing. I studied the Kabbalistic tree of life, which underpins the images and story produced for Dianne and Streams. At this time, I began a postgraduate diploma in religious studies at the Uni of Hissay. A great course, but I didn't finish it. I've always been interested in how humans make sense of the world around them through creation myths, religious stories, fairy tales, the commedia dell'arte, alchemy, metaphysics, philosophy, the list goes on. In Dianne's dreams, a complex world of symbolic figures and illusions are presented in an otherworldly format. Once again, the text was handwritten and offset printed, and the pages were bound professionally. Theatre of Embarkation was created in 1986 after my travels to Scotland in 1985. Previously, I had participated in a workshop by UK calligrapher Donald Jackson, who demonstrated working with vellum or animal skin, which was used for book production before paper was made in Europe. Jackson showed us the traditional way to work with vellum and also gold leaf illumination. Each painting on vellum became a scene from a play, the theatre metaphor adding a distance or layer of detachment from the painful experience of the breakdown of a marriage. Like many artists making books, ideas manifest in one medium, often flow through into other areas of practice. These mixed media theatre works were created in 1998. I was fortunate to have access to a sculpture studio while teaching at UniSA to build these theatres. Aberrant Observance was my first folio of prints of lithographs made while I was teaching for 1 year at Newcastle Art School in 1989. The studio resources at Newcastle Uni inspired the method of production. I had access to lithography and a specialist lithographer and technical officer, Shaw Hendry, who assisted in printing the edition. Shaw was a print specialist across all print media, and he also made the screens and printed my text pages. Some of you would know that Shaw became my husband, but as a printmaker, poet, and creative writer, he also edited the text of many of my artist books. Shaw died in 2010. Aberrant Observance, the folio that we printed in 1989, employs a symbolic language of text and image to describe stages of a metaphysical quest. The images in this folio respond to the notion of life as a journey and to what is possible and what is inevitable. The theatre-like series of images suggests that life is a strange play. The allegorical images are a visual manifesto of my worldview. As a play has a beginning and an end, in Aberrant Observance, the culmination is self-knowledge. To chance and seek, to love the spirit, the light, as death through time a crown. Yesterday, a speaker mentioned incantations or spells. This aphorism became my incantation, and it has been repeated as an underlying structure in many of my future works. Quest is a miniature concertina book reworking the imagery of Aberrant Observance. In addition to the addition of text here is letraset text. Again, I'm always looking for ways to add text to images. These small books are often handled and some parts of the letraset letters have broken off. Luckily, I found the original letraset I used and I can repair the letters, and some people in the audience may not even know what letraset text is. Rub it on, burnish it on. It's the equation between allowing people to handle works and that they get a bit damaged, what Sam was talking about yesterday. But these small works need to be examined closely. Food and Love were produced during an Australia Council studio residency in Tokyo. These unique books were created using vellum I brought with me and some of the great papers and little boxes I bought in Tokyo. Again, my surroundings are always influencing the nature and production of the books that I make. This was the first book in which I used computer typesetting, and not very successfully. The text was screen printed, the screens were made by Shaw at UniSA, but the typesetting was done by a colleague who did not let me touch the mouse. So I recreated this book in 2001 after I had discovered letterpress printing. And this new edition of books, a much more higher production processes were used. The letterpress was Ludlow, printed from a Ludlow typesetting machine. The images were all à la poupée inked. But before I got to letterpress, I still had to go through a lot of other permutations to create my books, the text in my books. So we're back in 1992, and this book, A Passage Illuminated, unfolds in rhyming couplets the parable of an unnamed girl who falls into the underworld of existence. The accompanying images suggest an existential computer game where self-actualization is the end prize. The central character moves through the various scenes encountering totemic animals along with archetypes such as the trickster and the samlet. The images are traditional zinc plate etchings, but the text this time was printed from pre-sensitized Mitsui zinc plates. The text plates were printed in relief. This time, the text was again computer typeset, but this time I was holding the mouse, and I had done a course in what was then Aldus PageMaker, which was reincarnated as Adobe PageMaker, and you would know it now as Adobe InDesign. So these are early days of my working with computers and starting to work with Adobe Photoshop. And Photoshop 1.0 had been released for Macintosh exclusively in 1990. It was not until 1992 that it was introduced to some lecturers and students at UniSA, where I was a sessional lecturer. My first project in Photoshop was to take the tonal lithographs from the Aberrant Observance folio, scan them, and use the Photoshop tools to colour the images. Thus begins my trajectory into the use of both analogue and digital processes. I liken analogue to the linear, but digital is multidimensional. It's like traditional chess is analogue, but three-dimensional chess, as played on Star Trek, is digital. One is not better than the other. The digital offers many possibilities, the analogue fewer. Sometimes less is more, other times more is more. Night Sea Crossing was made for a curated exhibition at the National Library of Australia titled River Styx. The book is a reminiscence of what is lost over the course of a life and what is gained. This work is an evocation of a leave-taking, an opportunity to take a breath, to take stock, and consider the journey so far. Night Sea Crossing won the first Fremantle Print Award Artist Book section in 1994. Okay. I'll move on more quickly. It was interesting that when the media talked about it, it was in the computer section of the Australian, and it's also, I bring to your attention that they noted exactly what my computer equipment was at the time. These were the thumbnails, just a little bit in the making of the work. I used scraper board, traditional scraper board, to begin the images. And the book was printed using overlays, printed on paper, overlays, and drafting film in between. The Golden Rose folio was produced digital underpinning, and it was my first use of photopolymer plates in a folio. So this was 1995. It was not long after I started working with photopolymer plates, the water washable plates. But interestingly, this folio, the images, even though they're digitally produced in terms of the file, a lot of it's hand-drawn. The prints were hand-printed through an etching press as relief prints. And a few from the archive, you'll see my computer setup back in 1995 and my studio in Adelaide. And this book, Compass of Change, again a digital work. The text To Chance and Seek aphorism became the underpinning for this work as well, but that was expanded into a chapter for each of those phrases. Interestingly, with digital files, there's that ability to create prints at different sizes, another advantage of working digitally. This book, Sensory Memorandum, was begun at Rochester at the Visual Studies Workshop that Lynn mentioned, and it was a sort of an ode to the senses as life becomes more technology-based. And just again to see that I'd actually made a series of sense monitors, and then the sensory memorandum book grew out of the workings for those images. What did Robert Heather say about focusing on an artist book collection? One of the things he said was to have fun. Well, this was a fun project that I made, a set of playing cards, cats, cakes, clothes and cups, features all my favourite things. And to create it's mainly digitally produced and printed through an inkjet printer, and all the cards were hand cut to make the suits of playing cards. Contingent ambiguity was perhaps my most ambitious folio. Research done, loved this photo of Gloria Swanson taken by Edward Steichen, inspired the images, and an essay by interview with Robert Desay inspired the essay that I wrote for the folio. The prints, again, digitally based, but I used this time photographic use of the photopolymer plates and a random dot screen or a stochastic screening to get almost a continuous tone effect in the images when they were printed. Okay, let's just go through and we'll just get to the last one. As Tim said, always sort of looking for new ways of doing things, and in 2023 I made this small book, Linked by Destiny, which if any of you have watched the Witcher series on Netflix, you'll see what you probably have an understanding of that idea of linked by destiny. But it returns again my use of the aphorism that to chance and seek underpins the structure of 8 images and little text passages. And this time, though, I had the images made into magnesium plates, which I foil printed. I have a 100-year-old foil press in my studio. In conclusion, my exploration of the artist book medium defines a trajectory into the use of both analogue and digital processes. My artist books and folios demonstrate a diverse range of image and text production, intaglio and inkjet images, letraset text to letterpress printed text, and diverse digital type options. For me, the concept or ideas to be explored in a particular work are the driving motivation in how I choose to make my ideas physically manifest. As digital possibilities expand exponentially, I find myself returning to analogue methods of production, albeit with digital processing underpinning the analogue physicality. Thank you.
It's very difficult to compress